January 13, 1842. Jalalabad, British India. The guard on the eastern wall sees him first. A man by himself stumbling across the snowy field, swaying on top of a half-dead pony. The animal's ribs stick out against its skin like prison bars. The rider is bent forward. One arm hangs down limp. His uniform is covered in frozen blood so thick it looks almost black. "Rider coming!" the guard yells. Officers run to the walls. They lift their telescopes. Someone sees the torn remains of a British medical officer's coat. The gates swing open. Soldiers run across the frozen ground. The rider slides off his pony and falls face-first into the snow. General Sir Robert Sale, the leader of the Jalalabad fort, kneels beside him. The man's head is wrapped in a dirty bandage. His face is so blackened by frostbite and gunpowder burns that he barely looks human. "Where is the column?" Sale demands. "Where is General Elphinstone? Where are the troops?" The man's eyes open. They are pale, haunted, empty. His voice comes out as a whisper. "I am the column." Sale leans closer. "What?" "I am the army." 16,500 people left Kabul 7 days ago. One man made it out. His name is Dr. William Britton. And this is the story of how an entire British army was swallowed by the mountains of Afghanistan. And why more than 180 years later, those mountains are still called the graveyard of empires. If this story grips you the way it gripped me when I first learned it, hit that like button and drop a comment below. It really helps us bring more forgotten history to light. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. December 1841, Kabul, Afghanistan. The snow falls soft and silent on the British camp, covering everything in white. The low mud brick walls. The scattered barracks. The parade ground where no one parades anymore. Dr. William Britton stands at the window of the medical building, watching snowflakes land on the shoulders of guards who stamp their feet against the cold and glance nervously toward the city. He's 29 years old, a helper surgeon with the East India Company's Army of the Industry. He's not a soldier. He's a doctor. But he's been in Afghanistan long enough to smell disaster coming. The camp is a masterpiece of military stupidity. It spreads across nearly a square mile of open ground northeast of Kabul, far too large to defend with the forces available. The walls are barely 5 feet high in places, low enough for a man to jump over. The ammunition stores are scattered in separate buildings across the compound instead of all in one place. The commissariat, where all the food is kept, sits on the far edge of the camp, exposed and easy to attack. Worst of all, the entire position is overlooked by a fortress called the Bala Hissar, held by Afghan forces, and by a series of low hills that offer perfect shooting positions into the compound. Britain had heard the arguments when the camp was built 2 years ago. The chief engineer warned it couldn't be defended. Major Eldred Pottinger, the political officer, called it suicide. But Sir William Macnaghten, the British representative to Afghanistan, the man who planned this entire doomed occupation, insisted on grandness. "We are here to civilize," Macnaghten had said. "We must show strength and permanence." Now, in December of 1841, 16,500 people are trapped inside those low walls, and the city of Kabul has turned against them. The camp holds 4,500 fighting men. The 44th Regiment of Foot. The 5th Light Cavalry. The Shah's 6th Regiment. Multiple Bengal native infantry battalions. Irregular cavalry and artillery companies. They are British officers and soldiers, Indian sepoys, irregular Afghan troops loyal to Shah Shuja, the puppet king the British installed. And then there are the 12,000 camp followers. This is the invisible army that follows every East India Company force into the field. Wives and children of British soldiers and sepoys. Personal servants. Grooms. Cooks. Merchants. Blacksmiths. Water carriers. Sweepers. Laundresses. The entire civilian workforce necessary to keep a 19th century military occupation running. Britain treats them all. Frostbite. Dysentery. Malnutrition. knife wounds from fights over the last scraps of firewood. He does what he can with dwindling supplies and no hope of resupply. The city's markets have been closed to the British for weeks. The Afghan chiefs, once bribed into cooperation with British gold, have risen in open revolt under the leadership of Akbar Khan, son of the removed Emir Dost Muhammad. On November 2, 1841, a mob stormed the home of Sir Alexander Burnes, Macnaghten's deputy, a man who spoke fluent Persian and believed he understood Afghan politics, and tore him apart in the street. His brother, Lieutenant Charles Burnes, died beside him. Their bodies were dragged through the Kabul marketplace while British officers watched from the camp walls and debated whether to step in. They decided not to. Major General William Elphinstone, the garrison commander, called a council of war. Officers argued for hours. Brigadier John Shelton demanded an immediate assault to rescue Burnes. Elphinstone hesitated. Macnaghten urged caution. By the time a decision was made, Burnes was dead and the city was in full revolt. That was when Britain knew they were all dead men. He turns from the window and walks through the medical ward. 40 men lie on cots, most suffering from frostbite or fever. British privates. Sepoys from the Bengal regiments. Irregular cavalry. A gunner from the artillery who lost 3 fingers to frostbite and infection. Britain checks the gunner's hand. The stumps are healing poorly. Without proper medical supplies, gangrene is setting in. "Am I going home, doctor?" the gunner asks. Britain meets his eyes. "You'll be on your feet soon enough." It's a lie, but it's a kind one. Outside, a distant crack of gunfire echoes from the hills. Britain doesn't flinch. The sniping has been constant for days. Afghan Jaziles picking off sentries. Officers. Anyone foolish enough to stand in the open. The British try to return fire, but the enemy is invisible, shooting from rooftops and compounds, disappearing before retaliation arrives. The camp is not under siege. It's under slow strangulation. Britain steps outside into the compound. The camp is crowded, chaotic, a small city crammed inside inadequate walls. Near the western wall, he sees clusters of camp followers. Women and children huddled around small fires trying to stay warm. The wives of British soldiers from the 44th Regiment. The families of sepoys from the 27th and 35th Bengal Native Infantry. Afghan servants who worked for British officers and are now trapped, neither British nor fully Afghan, belonging nowhere. Children play in the snow, their faces red with cold. Mothers watch them with hollow eyes. These 12,000 people are entirely dependent on the soldiers for protection. They have no weapons. Most have no winter clothing good enough for the Afghan winter. If the camp falls, they fall with it. Britain watches a woman trying to cook over a tiny fire made from scraps of wood. She has 3 children, all under the age of 10. The smallest is coughing, a wet, rattling sound that Britain recognizes. Pneumonia, probably. Without medicine, the child will be dead within a week. He doesn't approach. There's nothing he can give her. His medical stores are nearly empty. He walks across the parade ground toward the officers' quarters. The camp is organized by rank and unit. British officers have their own compound. The enlisted men of the 44th Regiment are housed separately. The sepoy battalions have their own lines. The cavalry is quartered near the stables. And the camp followers fill every remaining space, clustering wherever they can find shelter. Near the eastern wall, he passes the lines of the 44th Regiment afoot. Her Majesty's 44th. The only British infantry regiment in the garrison. 2 companies. About 200 men. Commanded by officers who've served in India for years. They're professionals, disciplined, but Britain can see the strain in their faces. Weeks of short rations. Constant sniping. The knowledge that they're trapped. The sepoy battalions are in worse shape. The men of the 27th, 35th, and 37th Bengal Native Infantry are loyal. They fought for the company for years, some for decades. But they're far from home, surrounded by hostile forces, commanded by British officers who are paralyzed by indecision. Rumors spread through the sepoy lines that the British will abandon them, take the cavalry and European troops, and leave the Indian soldiers to negotiate their own surrender with Akbar Khan. Britain doesn't know if the rumors are true, but he knows fear when he sees it. Major General William Elphinstone commands the garrison. He is 60 years old, crippled by gout and rheumatism, and utterly incapable of making a decision. Britain saw him once 2 weeks ago at a medical inspection. The general had to be helped from his horse. His hands shook. His face was gray. He looked like a man already dead, waiting for someone to tell him he could lie down. Elphinstone had been a good officer once, 40 years ago under Wellington at Waterloo. But that man is long gone, replaced by an invalid who spends his days in his quarters, writing letters to his superiors in India, begging for permission to retreat. The permission never comes. And so the camp rots. The command structure is paralyzed by infighting. Brigadier John Shelton, Elphinstone's second-in-command, openly hates the general and makes no effort to hide it. Shelton is aggressive, arrogant, and hateful of the camp followers whom he calls useless mouths. He pushes for an immediate attack on Kabul to reassert British control. Sir William Macnaghten, the political envoy, refuses. He still believes negotiation is possible. He still believes he can manage Afghan politics through gold and diplomacy. Major Eldred Pottinger, a political officer who was wounded defending the Kohistan region before retreating to Kabul, urges an immediate fighting withdrawal to Jalalabad, 90 miles to the east. We break out now, he argues in the councils of war, before the passes fill with snow. We take the cavalry, the best infantry, travel light, and fight our way through. And the camp followers? Elphinstone asks. We leave a volunteer rear guard with them and negotiate their surrender separately. We do not abandon British women and children. They will die if we stay, Pottinger snaps. We negotiate. And so they do nothing. Supplies dwindle. Firewood runs out. Men begin burning furniture, then saddles, then anything that will catch flame. The temperature drops below freezing every night. Sentries are found frozen at their posts. The horses, starving and weak, begin to die. The cavalry slaughter them for meat. Britain watches it all from the medical quarters and understands with cold clarity that the leadership has failed. Elphinstone cannot decide. Shelton and Macnaghten cannot agree. Pottinger is ignored. He begins preparing for the inevitable. He packs a small medical kit. Bandages. Surgical needles. A scalpel. His last 2 bottles of laudanum. He gets a pistol from a dying artillery officer, a lieutenant who took a Jezile ball through the lung and knows he won't survive. The lieutenant hands Britain the pistol and 12 rounds of ammunition. You'll need this more than me, doctor. Britain gets a pony from the stables, a scrawny, tough little animal from the Afghan hills. The kind that can survive on almost nothing. He feeds it from his own rations, hoarding scraps of grain. The other surgeons notice his preparations, but say nothing. They're making their own plans. On December 11th, the Council of War meets in Macnaghten's quarters. Britain is not present, but he hears the outcome within an hour. Macnaghten has made contact with Akbar Khan. The Afghan leader has offered terms. The British will be allowed to withdraw to Jalalabad with honor. They may keep their personal arms and 6 artillery pieces, light mountain guns. In exchange, they will leave Kabul peacefully and never return. It is the best we can hope for, Macnaghten announces. Pottinger, still recovering from his wound, argues against it. It is a trap. Akbar Khan wants us in the passes where we cannot maneuver. He will slaughter us. He has given his word as a chief, Macnaghten insists. He gave Sir Alexander Burnes assurances. They found pieces of him in 3 different streets. Elphinstone says nothing. He stares at his hands as if they belong to someone else. The vote is called. The majority sides with Macnaghten. They will accept Akbar Khan's terms. They will leave Kabul. When Britain hears the news, he walks out into the snow and stares at the mountains to the east. The Hindu Kush rises in jagged white peaks, beautiful and merciless. Somewhere beyond those peaks lies Jalalabad. 90 miles. 5 mountain passes in winter. He thinks about the 12,000 camp followers who have never marched through mountain passes, who have no weapons, who are already starving. He thinks about 60-year-old General Elphinstone trying to command a fighting retreat. He thinks about Akbar Khan's promise of safe passage. Then he goes back inside and adds 3 more rounds of ammunition to his kit. December 23, 1841. Sir William Macnaghten rides out of the camp to meet Akbar Khan in person. He takes 3 officers with him: Captain Robert Trevor, Captain George Lawrence, and Lieutenant John Airy. The meeting is supposed to finalize the terms of the British withdrawal. Macnaghten is confident. He has negotiated with Afghan chiefs for 2 years. He believes he understands them. Britain is in the medical quarters when the shout goes up from the walls. They've taken him. He runs outside. Other officers are already racing toward the walls. Britain climbs the ladder to the walkway and stares across the snowy field. The meeting ground is half a mile away near a low compound. Macnaghten's party is surrounded by Afghan horsemen. Too many. Moving too fast. There is a struggle. Horses rear. Men shout. A gunshot cracks across the stillness. Macnaghten is dragged from his saddle. Britain watches, frozen, as the British envoy disappears into the mass of riders. Lieutenant Airy is shot and falls from his horse. Captain Trevor is pulled from his mount, screaming. Captain Lawrence tries to fight his way to Macnaghten and is overwhelmed. The Afghans wheel their horses and gallop toward Kabul, dragging something behind them. It takes Britain a moment to realize it's Macnaghten's body. The camp explodes into chaos. Officers run from building to building, shouting orders, canceling each other. Shelton demands an immediate assault on the city. Pottinger argues for an instant breakout toward Jalalabad. Elphinstone locks himself in his quarters and will not come out. By evening, the news filters back from the city. Macnaghten's severed head is on display in the Kabul marketplace. His hands have been cut off and paraded through the streets on pikes. Afghan chiefs are celebrating in the Bala Hissar. Captain Lawrence, badly wounded, is the only officer who makes it back alive. He's brought to the medical quarters. Britain treats his wounds, a sword cut across the forearm, deep bruises from being beaten. Lawrence lies on the cot, trembling, staring at the ceiling. "It was planned," Lawrence whispers. "All of it. They were waiting." "I know," Britain says quietly. "Are we getting out of here?" "I don't know." Lawrence closes his eyes and doesn't speak again. That night, a messenger arrives from Akbar Khan. Despite the unfortunate incident involving Macnaghten, the offer of safe passage still stands. The British may leave with their personal arms and limited artillery. They will not be harmed. The senior officers hold another council. Pottinger, exhausted and furious, makes one final argument. "This is bait. He murders our envoy and then renews his promise. He wants us in the passes. We must fight our way out now. Tonight. With the cavalry and the strongest units. It's brutal, but it's our only chance." "And abandon 12,000 people?" someone asks. "They're dead either way. At least give the fighting men a chance." Elphinstone, emerging from his quarters for the first time in days, his face gray and haggard, shakes his head. "We are British officers. We do not abandon women and children." The vote is called. They will accept Akbar Khan's terms. They will leave on January 6, 1842. Britain hears the decision and feels something cold settle in his chest. They're all going to die. Not all at once. Not in a single battle. But slowly. Over days. In the frozen passes between Kabul and Jalalabad. He returns to his quarters and checks his preparations one final time. Pistol. 12 rounds. Medical kit. Limited supplies. Pony. Barely fed but still standing. Papers from home. Letters from his family in Scotland. Medical notes. A sketch his sister sent. He folds them carefully and tucks them into his military cap, layering them against the inner lining. He doesn't know why. The papers are worthless. But leaving them behind feels like abandoning the last piece of himself that isn't a surgeon, isn't a soldier, isn't a man about to walk into hell. Outside, the snow continues to fall. Inside the camp, 16,500 people prepare to leave. Most of them don't know they're preparing to die. December 24, 1841. The day after the murder. The camp is paralyzed. Britain moves through the medical quarters in the gray dawn light, stepping over men who haven't slept. Some are weeping. Others sit in silence, staring at nothing. A young officer from the 5th Light Cavalry vomits in the corner, then wipes his mouth and vomits again. No one speaks of retreat anymore. No one speaks of negotiation. They speak only of what they saw from the walls. Macnaghten's hands, severed at the wrists, displayed on poles in the Kabul marketplace. His head mounted on a pike outside the Bala Hissar fortress. His legs dragged through the streets by crowds who celebrated the death of the British envoy. Captain George Lawrence lies on a cot in the corner, the only officer from yesterday's meeting party to survive. Britain had treated him through the night. A deep sword cut across the forearm. Severe bruising across his ribs and back from being beaten. Lawrence stares at the ceiling, his lips moving in silent repetition of the same words. They were waiting. It was planned. All of it. Britain changes his bandages in silence. When he finishes, Lawrence grabs his wrist. "We're not getting out of here, are we, Doctor?" Britain looks into the captain's eyes and sees a man who already knows the answer. "No." Lawrence nods slowly, as if the confirmation brings some kind of relief. Then he releases Britain's wrist and turns his face to the wall. By mid-morning, the command structure has collapsed entirely. General Elphinstone refuses to leave his quarters. His personal servant reports that the general is bedridden, unable to walk without assistance, his gout so severe he cannot stand. Brigadier Shelton storms through the camp, shouting contradictory orders. Prepare to assault Kabul. No, form a defensive perimeter. No, organize for withdrawal. The soldiers don't know who to obey. The sepoy battalions wait for orders that never come. The cavalry tends to dying horses. The camp followers huddle in doorways, watching British officers run from building to building in obvious panic. It's Major Eldred Pottinger who finally restores some order. He's still recovering from the gunshot wound to his shoulder that he took defending Kohistan before the retreat to Kabul. His arm is in a sling. His face is gray with pain. But his voice cuts through the chaos like a blade. "Form up your companies," he shouts at the officers of the 44th Regiment. "Get your men into defensive positions along the walls. Artillery, position your guns to cover the gates. Move." The officers scramble to obey. Pottinger is not the senior commander, but he's the only one giving clear, decisive orders. In a crisis, clarity is command. Britain watches him from the doorway of the medical quarters. Pottinger moves like a man who knows he's dying but refuses to lie down. There's something relentless about it. One foot in front of the other. One order after another. As if momentum alone can hold back the inevitable. By noon, a messenger arrives from the city. He's an Afghan boy, no more than 12, carrying a sealed letter. The sentries nearly shoot him before Captain Colin Mackenzie of the Shah's 6th Regiment intervenes and brings the boy to the officer's compound. The letter is addressed to the British command. It's written in Persian. Pottinger breaks the seal and reads it aloud to the assembled officers, translating as he goes. The message is from Akbar Khan. He expresses deep regret for the unfortunate incident involving Sir William Macnaghten. He blames rogue elements beyond his control. Tribal chiefs whose passions overwhelmed their judgment. He assures the British that he personally did not order the killing. And he reaffirms his offer. The British may withdraw to Jalalabad with honor. They will not be harmed. They have his word. Pottinger finishes reading and looks up at the assembled officers. 20 men stare back at him. Captains, lieutenants, subalterns. The remaining leadership of a dying garrison. He's lying, Pottinger says flatly. Shelton steps forward. We have no choice. We cannot hold through winter. Supplies are exhausted. The men are on quarter rations. Another week and we'll be eating the dead. Then we fight our way out tonight. The cavalry. The 44th. The strongest sepoy companies. We move fast and fight through. And abandon 12,000 camp followers? They will die in the passes anyway. But a fighting column might reach Jalalabad. Shelton's face hardens. I will not put my name to an order that abandons British women and children to slavery and death. Then you'll put your name to an order that kills them in the snow instead. The argument continues for an hour. Voices rise. Men shout over each other. Captain Mackenzie suggests sending another envoy to negotiate better terms. Lieutenant Henry Harding of the 5th Light Cavalry proposes surrendering the camp entirely and throwing themselves on Akbar Khan's mercy as prisoners of war. Pottinger listens to it all with growing disgust. Finally, he turns and walks out of the meeting. Britain is waiting outside. They're going to accept the offer, aren't they? Britain asks. Pottinger stops, his back to Britain. Yes. Even though it's a trap? Yes. Why? Pottinger turns. His face is haggard, hollowed out by pain and exhaustion and the weight of being the only man in the garrison who sees clearly what's coming. Because the alternative is admitting we came here for nothing. That we invaded this country, installed a puppet king no one wanted, occupied Kabul for 2 years, and bled ourselves dry for no purpose. Men cannot accept that. So they choose the lie that lets them believe there's still hope. He walks away across the frozen parade ground, his breath steaming in the cold air. Britain stands alone, watching him go. That night, the decision is formalized. The British will accept Akbar Khan's terms. They will leave Kabul on January 6, 1842. The days between December 24th and January 6th are a slow descent into hell. Supplies run out entirely. The garrison is on starvation rations. 4 ounces of grain per day shared between soldiers and camp followers. Men slaughter the last of the cavalry horses for meat. The 5th Light Cavalry, once mounted on some of the finest horses in India, is now largely on foot. The animals are butchered and divided among the troops. The camp followers are in worse condition. The 12,000 civilians have no organized supply system. They survive on scraps, on charity from soldiers who can barely feed themselves, on whatever they can scavenge from the increasingly bare camp. Britain sees children with swollen bellies, the classic sign of starvation. He sees women boiling leather straps to make a kind of soup. He sees old men sitting motionless in the snow, too weak to move, waiting to die. Firewood is gone. Families burn their furniture, their carts, their children's toys, anything that will produce heat. The temperature drops to 10 below zero at night. Sentries are found frozen at their posts, their hands still gripping their muskets, their eyes open and glazed. The medical quarters overflow. Britain works without rest, treating frostbite, dysentery, pneumonia, starvation. He amputates blackened toes and fingers with a dull scalpel because he has no other tools. He doses men with the last of his laudanum and watches them die anyway. A gunner from the artillery is brought in with both feet frozen solid. Britain examines him and shakes his head. I can take the feet, but you won't survive the shock. Not in your condition. The gunner looks up at him with sunken eyes. Do it anyway, doctor. I do not wish to die whole. Britain performs the amputation. The man dies 3 hours later. On January 1, 1842, the final terms are negotiated. Akbar Khan's representatives meet with the British officers outside the camp. The agreement is formalized. The British will leave on January 6. They may take their personal arms, rifles, pistols, swords. They may take 6 artillery pieces, all 9-pounder mountain guns, light enough to be moved quickly. All heavy guns will be spiked and abandoned. The British will provide hostages as a guarantee of good behavior. Senior officers and their families will be placed in Akbar Khan's protective custody until the column reaches Jalalabad safely. Then the hostages will be released. The hostages will include wives and children of officers, a deliberate choice to ensure the British keep to the agreement. In return, Akbar Khan pledges that the column will not be attacked. They will have safe passage through the passes. When the terms are announced to the garrison, a murmur runs through the troops. The sepoys of the Bengal native infantry mutter to each other in Hindustani. The men of the 44th Regiment exchange dark looks. The cavalry officers argue quietly among themselves. Everyone understands what the hostage clause means. The British are handing leverage to a man who murdered their envoy under a flag of truce. But no one refuses. Because the alternative is staying in Kabul and starving to death. Pottinger is ordered to join the hostages. He refuses violently. I will not give myself into the hands of a man who butchered Macnaghten and paraded his body through the streets. Shelton argues with him. Elphinstone, carried into the meeting on a litter, barely conscious, begs him. Your presence will ensure our safety. Major, Akbar Khan respects you. You defended Kohistan. He knows your worth. He'll kill me the moment I'm in his power. Please, Pottinger. For the women. For the children. Captain Colin Mackenzie, who has served with Pottinger for years, steps forward and speaks quietly. Eldred, if you don't go, they'll name someone else. An officer with a wife. With children. Let it be you. Pottinger goes still. His jaw works. His good hand clenches into a fist. Then, slowly, he nods. I'll go. Britain watches from across the compound as Pottinger joins the group of hostages being assembled. The major's face is unreadable, but his shoulders are tight with suppressed fury. They'll never see him again, Britain thinks. Or if they do, it will be as a corpse. On January 5th, the eve of departure, the camp begins the final preparations. What little remains in the storehouses is distributed. Ammunition is rationed. 20 rounds per man for the infantry. Less for the cavalry. The artillery crews are given powder and shot for the 6 mountain guns. Enough for 30 rounds per gun if they're lucky. The camp followers are told to pack light. 1 bundle per family. No carts. No furniture. Only what they can carry on their backs. Many don't understand. They followed the army for years, gathered possessions, built small lives in the margins of the British occupation. Now they're being told to abandon everything. An officer shouts, "Form line. Return fire." But there's no room to form a line. The road is too narrow. The column too compressed. The infantry tries to return fire, shooting blindly at rooftops. Most shots hit nothing but mud brick. The Afghans fire methodically. 1 shot. Reload. Another shot. They're not trying to stop the column. They're bleeding it. Casualties mount rapidly. Officers are targeted first. Their uniforms mark them as valuable. Within 20 minutes, 3 more officers are down. Captain Robert Anderson of the 5th Cavalry is shot through the chest. Lieutenant William Sturt, the garrison engineer, is wounded in the leg but manages to stay in his saddle. The sepoy battalions take heavy losses. The men of the 27th and 35th Bengal Native Infantry march in formation, but they're exposed, unable to take cover on the narrow road. Men drop in their ranks. The formations tighten, close the gaps, keep marching. The camp followers panic. 12,000 civilians, most unarmed, many barefoot, suddenly under fire. They scatter in every direction, pushing against the military formations, breaking whatever order remains. Families are separated. Children are lost in the crush. Britain watches a woman, a camp follower carrying an infant, struck in the back by a Jezile ball. She falls face first into the snow. The infant rolls free, screaming. A man, perhaps her husband, perhaps a stranger, scoops up the child and keeps walking. The woman doesn't move. Britain dismounts, pushes through the crowd, checks her pulse. Dead. He remounts. The column has already moved past him. He spurs his pony to catch up. The sniping continues for the next 2 hours. Crack, crack, crack. Each shot deliberate, spaced out, impossible to predict. The column learns to flinch at every sound. But flinching doesn't help. The bullets come anyway. Captain James Skinner, commanding the rear companies of the 44th Regiment, tries to organize a response. He positions sharpshooters to watch the rooftops, orders them to fire at muzzle flashes. It helps slightly. A few Afghan snipers are hit. But for every one killed, 2 more take their place. By mid-morning, they've covered 3 miles. 200 people are dead. The road is littered with bodies. British soldiers. Sepoys. Camp followers. Some are stripped already by scavengers who dart out from the compounds, take weapons and valuables, and disappear. Ahead, the road begins to climb into the foothills. Beyond that, visible in the distance, is the entrance to Kurd Kabul Pass, the first major killing ground. They reach the entrance to Kurd Kabul Pass at noon. The gorge is a 5-mile defile between sheer cliffs, barely wide enough for the column to move in single file in places. The road is rough, strewn with rocks and ice. The cliffs rise 100 feet on both sides, their tops lined with Ghilzai tribesmen. Thousands of them. Britain can see them from half a mile away. Fighters positioned on both sides of the gorge, their long jaziles resting on rocks, waiting. The British column has no choice. This is the only road to Jalalabad. To turn back is to return to Kabul and starvation. To go forward is to enter the killing ground. They go forward. The column funnels into the gorge, and the Ghilzai open fire. The cliffs erupt with gunfire. Hundreds of tribesmen positioned on both sides, firing down into the compressed column. The sound is deafening. A continuous roar of gunfire echoing off the rock walls, so loud it becomes a physical pressure against the eardrums. Men and animals go down in heaps. There's nowhere to take cover. Nowhere to run. The column is trapped in the defile, compressed into a narrow space less than 20 feet wide in places, unable to maneuver. The cavalry tries to charge ahead, break through the pass. Horses are shot and fall, blocking the road. Men try to drag the carcasses aside. More shots. The men fall. The infantry attempts to return fire. The 44th Regiment forms ranks as best they can in the confined space, aims at the clifftops, fires volleys. But the Ghilzai are too high, too well protected behind rocks. British volleys hit stone and empty air. The artillery tries to deploy the mountain guns. They manage to unlimber, load them with case shot, and fire at the cliffs. The explosions are spectacular, showering rock fragments. But the damage is minimal. The tribesmen are too dispersed, too well covered. And while the artillery reloads, the jazile fire continues. The camp followers are trapped in the center of the column, crushed between the military units ahead and behind. They have no weapons, no protection. They can only huddle together and hope the bullets miss them. They don't. Britain's pony is grazed by a bullet, a shallow wound across its flank. The animal rears, nearly throws him. He holds on, grips the reins, gets it under control. A bullet whizzes past his head, close enough that he feels the air displacement. He dismounts, leads the pony on foot. Safer to be a smaller target. Around him, the medical staff are being decimated. One of the 3 medical carts is hit. A lucky shot strikes the driver in the head. He falls. The cart veers off the road and overturns, spilling supplies down the slope. Bandages. Bottles. Instruments. All lost. Britain sees a sepoy, a man from the 27th Bengal Native Infantry, shot in the chest. The man staggers, looks down at the wound, blood soaking his uniform, then crumples. Britain can't stop. There's nothing he can do. No time to treat the wounded. The column keeps moving, stepping over bodies, pushing forward because forward is the only direction left. Lieutenant Sturt, already wounded in the leg from the morning sniping, is hit again, this time in the shoulder. He stays on his horse, his face white with pain, but he doesn't fall. Captain Skinner moves among his men of the 44th, keeping them steady, preventing panic. Hold formation. Keep moving. We'll be through this soon. It's a lie, but it's a necessary one. The gorge goes on forever. 5 miles. 5 miles of continuous killing. The column moves at a crawl. Every 100 yards costs lives. 10, 20, 30 people dead for each small advance. The snow underfoot turns red. Bodies pile in drifts where the road narrows. Britain sees a group of camp followers, women and children huddled together, struck by a volley of Jezile fire. 3 women fall. 1 child. The survivors scream but cannot stop, cannot bury them, can only keep moving. The fighting is relentless. The Ghilzai have unlimited ammunition, it seems, and unlimited patience. They fire from the cliffs. When British troops try to climb up to dislodge them, the tribesmen retreat, circle around, reappear on another section of cliff. It's not a battle. It's a massacre with the illusion of movement. 6 hours. It takes 6 hours to traverse 5 miles. When the column finally emerges on the other side of Kurd Kabul Pass, the sun is setting and 3,000 people are dead or missing. 3,000 out of 16,500 in one afternoon. In 5 miles. The survivors collapse onto open ground, too exhausted to move another step. The temperature drops to 20 below zero. No fires are permitted. Akbar Khan's forces are close, circling in the darkness. A fire would draw an attack. So 13,000 people huddle on frozen ground in the dark, trying not to die before dawn. Britain dismounts on shaking legs. His pony is bleeding from the graze on its flank, but the wound is shallow. He ties a strip of cloth around it and lets the animal rest. Around him, the wreckage of the column is scattered across the hillside. There's no organization anymore. No formation. Just clusters of people huddled together, soldiers mixed with camp followers, officers with sepoys, everyone seeking warmth, seeking shelter that doesn't exist. Britain walks through the chaos looking for wounded he can treat. There are too many. He has 1 medical cart left. The other 2 lost in the pass. His supplies are nearly exhausted. He has bandages, but not enough. He has 1 bottle of laudanum. He has a scalpel and a few needles. That's all. A sepoy from the 35th Bengal Native Infantry is brought to him, carried by 2 of his comrades. The man has been shot through the abdomen. Britain examines the wound and knows immediately there's nothing he can do. The bullet has torn through the intestines. Without surgery, real surgery in a hospital with proper instruments and assistance, the man will die of sepsis within days. Can you help him, Dr. Sahib? One of the sepoys asks. Britain doses the wounded man with laudanum. Enough to dull the pain. Keep him warm. That's all we can do. The sepoys nod and carry their comrade away to die. Britain moves on. He finds Lieutenant Sturt, twice wounded, sitting against a rock. Sturt's wife is with him, Lady Florentia Sale's daughter. She's pregnant, wrapped in a thin shawl, shivering violently. Britain checks Sturt's wounds. The shoulder wound is serious, but not immediately fatal. The leg wound is infected. You need rest, Britain tells him. Sturt laughs, a dry, bitter sound. We're marching again at dawn, Doctor. There is no rest. His wife looks at Britain with desperate eyes. Will we reach Jalalabad? Britain doesn't answer. He can't lie to her. She sees the truth in his silence. He moves on. Near the edge of the camp, he finds Captain Skinner with what's left of the 44th Regiment. They've formed a defensive perimeter. Men standing shoulder to shoulder, muskets ready, watching the darkness for attackers. Skinner sees Britain and nods. Doctor. Still breathing, I see. For now. How are your men? Skinner looks at his regiment. 200 men left Kabul this morning. He counts them now. 160. 40 men died in one day. "We'll stay and fight," Skinner says quietly. "As long as we have bullets and sunlight, we'll stay and fight." Brighton hears what he doesn't say out loud. "When the bullets run out, when it gets dark, we'll die." Around the edge, the people traveling with the army sit in family groups. Mothers hold children trying to keep warm together. Old men sit alone, too weak to move. The cold is cruel. People start to freeze in the first hour after the sun goes down. Brighton walks past a family. A woman and 3 small children. The youngest, a baby, is silent, too silent. The woman rocks the child, humming softly, but Brighton can see the truth. The baby is dead. Has been for hours. The woman either doesn't know or can't accept it. He keeps walking. There's nothing he can say that will make it better. Near the big guns, the soldiers are trying to protect their 6 mountain guns. They've lost 2 horses already, shot in the mountain pass. The horses they have left are dying from being too tired and having no food. The soldiers talk about leaving the guns behind. They're heavy, slow, almost useless against enemies on top of cliffs. But the guns are all they have, the only big weapons for 13,000 people, so they keep them. At midnight, noise comes from the center of the camp. A messenger has arrived from Akbar Khan. The British officers gather around a small fire. They're not supposed to have to meet him. Brighton stands at the edge of the circle watching. The messenger gives his message in Persian. Captain Colin Mackenzie translates. Akbar Khan is sorry for the bad attack in Kurd Kabul Pass. Wild groups, tribe fighters he can't control. He still wishes the British well, but the group is in danger. More tribes are gathering. To keep everyone safe, more prisoners must be given. Senior officers, their families as a promise of good faith. The officers argue. Some want to say no. Others say they have no choice. Brigadier Shelton, one of the few top commanders still with the group, makes the decision. "We agree. Get the prisoners ready." Families are woken up in the freezing darkness and told to pack their things. Children cry. Women cry. Officers who've worked together for years hug, knowing they'll never see each other again. Lieutenant John Sturt is one of those picked. His pregnant wife will go with him to be held prisoner. Sturt sees Brighton and raises his hand goodbye. Ben raises his hand back. Then the prisoners are taken away into the darkness toward the Afghan side. The camp gets quiet again. Ben goes back to his pony and sits beside the animal, leaning against its warmth. He pulls out his gun and checks the bullet chambers in the moonlight. 12 bullets. He's fired none yet. He puts the gun back into his coat and takes off his hat. The papers are still there, letters from Scotland, from his sister, from home. He unfolds them carefully, his fingers numb, and reads by moonlight. The words are familiar, comforting, a different world, a different life. He folds them and puts them back into the hat's inside lining. Around him, the night is filled with sounds. Crying, praying, the low moan of wind across the frozen ground, and underneath it all, quieter, the sound of people dying. A child calling for water that no one has. A soldier whispering prayers in Hindi, his voice getting weaker. A woman singing a lullaby to a child who won't wake up. Brighton doesn't sleep. He sits beside his pony and watches the stars move across the sky. By morning, another 150 people have frozen to death. The people traveling with the army suffer the worst. Families who huddle together for warmth are found frozen in circles, locked together by ice, their bodies already stiff. The Indian soldier groups lose dozens. Men who sat down to rest and never stood up again. The British groups do slightly better. The 44th keeps order, forces men to stay on their feet, to keep moving. But even they lose men to the cold. When morning comes, gray and cold and cruel, the survivors get up and get ready to move. 13,500 left Kabul yesterday. 11,000 are left. They've traveled 8 miles. 82 miles to Jalalabad. Brighton gets on his pony. His hands are so cold he can barely hold the reins. Ahead, the road goes higher into the mountains. More passes, more places where they'll be killed. Behind, the snow is red. Bodies are scattered across the hillside. British soldiers, Indian soldiers, people traveling with the army, women, children. No one buries them. There's no time, no tools. The ground is frozen solid. The group moves east. Day 2 begins. January 7th, 1842. Morning comes over the group, and with it comes the understanding that the prisoners were taken for nothing. The attacks start again less than an hour after sunrise. Afghan soldiers on horses sweep down from the hills, shooting into the sides of the group. Ghilzai tribesmen attack the back. Snipers on faraway ridges shoot officers and soldiers, anyone whose uniform makes them easy to see. Brighton rides in the middle of what's left of the group. His pony struggling through snow that's now waist deep. The road has disappeared completely. The group finds its way by instinct, following the low ground between hills, hoping it goes east toward Jalalabad. It doesn't always. Twice during the morning, the front takes wrong turns and the whole group has to go back, wasting hours, burning energy no one can spare. Each time they go backward, more people fall in the snow and don't get up. The group is no longer a military group. It's a group of refugees. 11,000 people stretched across 2 miles of mountain land, held together only because they're all moving in the same direction. The military groups try to keep some organization. Captain Skinner's companies of the 44th Regiment still march in rows, though their numbers are getting smaller. The Indian soldier groups of the 27th and 35th Bengal Native Infantry keep their organization, sergeants shouting orders in Hindustani, holding men together through discipline and habit. But the horse soldiers have mostly fallen apart. The 5th Light Cavalry, once a group of professional horsemen, is now mostly on foot. Their horses were eaten in Kabul or shot in yesterday's fighting. The few officers still on horses ride animals so weak they can barely walk. And the people traveling with the army, 10,000 civilians, mostly women and children, have no organization at all. They group together in family clusters, extended family networks, groups from the same village or the same regiment. They follow the soldiers because the soldiers are the only protection they have, but the soldiers can't protect them. By mid-morning, the group reaches a small, empty village. A bunch of mud brick buildings built into the hillside. The officers call a stop. People fall where they stand. Brighton gets off his horse and ties his pony to a wooden post. The animal's head hangs down. It's breathing hard. He looks at the wound from yesterday. The cut on its side is forming a scab. No sign of infection. He pets the pony's neck. Just keep going. That's all you have to do. He walks through the village looking for anything useful. The buildings have been emptied. No food, no firewood, nothing valuable. The people who lived here ran away before the British arrived, taking everything with them. In one building, he finds a group of people traveling with the army huddled around a dying fire made from pieces of furniture. They're burning pieces of a door, watching the flames with desperate eyes. An old woman sees Brighton and points to the fire. "Sit, sir. Warm yourself." He sits for a moment, holding his hands to the flames. The heat is very little, but it's something. "How far to Jalalabad?" the woman asks. 80 miles, maybe less. "We will make it." Brighton looks at her bare feet, her thin shawl, her hollow eyes. She's starving, freezing, and she's asking him for hope. "Stay close to the soldiers," he tells her. "Don't fall behind." It's not an answer, but it's all he has. Outside, things are getting worse fast. Afghan riders appear on the hills around them. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They don't attack right away. They just watch, circling the village, waiting. Brigadier Shelton orders the military groups to form a circle of defense. The 44th Regiment lines up along the eastern side of the village. The Indian soldier groups take the south and west. The horse soldiers, those few still on horses, get ready to respond to any break in the line. The big gun crews set up their remaining mountain guns. They've already lost 2 of the original 6, left behind yesterday when the horses pulling them were shot. 4 guns are left. The crews position them to cover the ways in. An hour into the stop, a messenger rides down from the hills under a white flag. The British officers gather to meet him. Brighton watches from far away as Captain Colin Mackenzie translates the message from Persian. Akbar Khan offers new terms. The group is moving too slowly. Winter storms are coming. More tribe forces are gathering that he can't control. For the safety of the British, he suggests that the group leave behind the people traveling with the army. The fighting men, the soldiers, the officers can go to Jalalabad quickly without being slowed down. The people traveling with the army will be protected, fed and sent to Jalalabad later when the weather gets better. Silence follows the translation. Every officer understands what this means. Protected means made into slaves. The women will be sold. The children will be taken. The elderly will be killed. There will be no later. Shelton's face hardens. Tell him we say no. The group stays together. The messenger nods, shows no emotion, and rides back to the hills. Within minutes, the attacks start again. This time, the Afghans don't hold back. Horse soldiers charge from 3 directions at the same time. Gunfire rakes the village from the hills around it. Hundreds of tribesmen rush down the slopes, shooting guns, swinging swords. The British try to hold the circle. The 44th Regiment fires organized volleys, their discipline holding despite the chaos. Captain Skinner moves among his men, keeping them steady. First row fire. Second row ready. The volleys crash out. Afghans fall, but more keep coming. The Indian soldier groups fight with the same professional discipline. The men of the 27th Bengal Native Infantry hold their section of the circle, firing, reloading, firing again. But bullets are running low. Officers shout at men to make every shot count. The big gun's fire case shot into the charging horse soldiers. The 9-pound mountain guns are small, but at close distance, they're devastating. One blast of case shot, basically a big shotgun shell, cuts down a dozen riders. But the guns are slow to reload. Between shots, the Afghans move forward. A group of tribesmen breaks through the circle on the south side. Hand-to-hand fighting breaks out. Indian soldiers meet them with bayonets. Steel on steel, men shouting, dying. Brighton crouches behind a wall, his gun drawn. He doesn't fire. He's saving his bullets. An Afghan rushes toward him, sword raised. Brighton aims, fires. The man goes down. 11 bullets left. The fighting lasts 2 hours. The British hold the village, but the cost is huge. 200 dead, 300 wounded. Bullets used at an alarming rate. The men of the 44th are down to 10 bullets per man. The Indian soldier groups have less. And the wounded keep coming to Brighton. He sets up a makeshift medical station in one of the buildings. Wounded men are carried to him. British soldiers, Indian soldiers, horse soldiers. He does what he can with almost nothing. A soldier from the 44th with a sword cut across his forearm. Brighton cleans it with snow, stitches it closed with the last of his medical thread. An Indian soldier from the 35th with a bullet through his thigh. The bone is shattered. Without proper surgery, the man will lose the leg. Without cutting off the leg, he'll die of gangrene. Brighton gives him pain medicine and moves on. There's nothing else he can do. An officer of the 5th Cavalry with multiple wounds, sword cuts, a bullet graze. Brighton bandages what he can. The officer is pale, going into shock. Will I make it to Jalalabad, doctor? If you can ride. I can ride. The officer dies an hour later. By the time the Afghans pull back, Brighton's last bottle of pain medicine is half empty. His bandages are running out. His medical tools are lost. The cart carrying them was destroyed in the fighting. He has a scalpel, a few needles, some strips of cloth. That's all. When the order comes to move out, half the wounded can't walk. They're left behind. The British have no stretchers, no carts to spare. Men who can't march on their own cannot come. Brighton watches soldiers, men he treated, men he tried to save, left sitting against building walls as the group moves past them. The Afghans will find them within hours. The group staggers out of the village and back onto the road. Brighton gets back on his pony. His hands shake, not from cold, from exhaustion and the weight of knowing this will happen again tomorrow. He looks back at the village one last time. The wounded British and Indian soldiers sit in the snow, watching the group leave. Some wave, others just stare. Brighton turns forward and doesn't look back again. The road goes higher into the mountains. The air gets thinner. Breathing becomes a struggle. The snow gets deeper to chest height in places. Men wade through it, lifting their knees high with each step, gasping, falling, getting up, falling again. Some don't get up. By nightfall on January 7th, they've covered 5 miles. Another 1,000 people are dead. 9,000 are left. The second night is worse than the first. The group camps on an empty hillside with no shelter, no firewood, no water except what can be melted from snow. The temperature drops to 30 below zero. Brighton doesn't try to sleep. He walks through the camp because moving is the only thing that keeps him warm. The people traveling with the army are dying in groups. He finds families frozen together, mothers holding children, husbands protecting wives. By morning, they'll be ice sculptures. The Indian soldier groups huddle in tight groups, standing rather than sitting because sitting means you won't get up again. The men stand shoulder to shoulder, sharing body heat, keeping each other alive through closeness and will. The 44th Regiment keeps its discipline even here. Captain Skinner has his men form into groups of 10. Each group pressed together for warmth. Officers walk around through the night, checking on their men, making sure no one falls asleep and freezes. Brighton finds Brigadier Shelton near the big guns. Shelton is one of the few top officers still with the group. General Elphinstone was taken as a prisoner yesterday. Major Pottinger went with him. The command structure is a skeleton. Shelton is staring at the 4 remaining mountain guns. The crews sit nearby, exhausted. We should leave them behind, Shelton says without looking at Brighton. The guns slow us down. The horses are dying. They're the only big guns we have. They're useless against enemies on clifftops. And we're running out of bullets. Brighton doesn't argue. Shelton is right. But the guns are a symbol, the last piece of British military power. To leave them behind is to admit they're not an army anymore, just refugees running for their lives. Near midnight, another messenger arrives from Akbar Khan. This time, the demand is clear. Brigadier Shelton and the remaining senior officers must give themselves up as prisoners. In return, the group will be given safe passage for the rest of the journey. Supplies will be given. Guides will be sent. The officers who are left, mostly captains and lieutenants now, gather to talk. It's another lie, someone says. He's taken prisoners twice. Nothing has changed. What choice do we have? Someone else replies. We've lost a third of the group in 2 days. If this continues, we'll all be dead before we reach Jalalabad. The debate is brief. Everyone is too cold, too exhausted for long arguments. Shelton makes the decision himself. I'll go. Maybe my presence will buy time for the rest of you. No one believes him, but no one argues. The prisoners are gathered. Shelton, 3 captains, 2 lieutenants. No families this time. The wives and children were taken yesterday. Captain Skinner comes to say goodbye to one of the leaving officers, a friend from the 44th. They shake hands. Take care of the regiment, the leaving captain says. I will. They both know it's a lie. There won't be a regiment to take care of in 3 days. The prisoners are led away into the darkness. The group is now commanded by captains and lieutenants. The highest-ranking officer left is Captain James Bellew of the Bengal Cavalry. He's 28 years old and in command of 9,000 people. He has no idea what to do. Brighton goes back to his pony and sits in the snow beside it. He pulls out his gun and checks it in the moonlight. 11 bullets. He's fired one. He puts the gun away and takes off his hat. The papers are still there. He unfolds them. Letters from Scotland from his sister. The ink is smudged from moisture. Some words aren't readable now. He reads what he can, then folds them carefully and puts them back. The night drags on. By morning, 1,500 more people have frozen to death. The number is staggering. In one night, 1,500 people, soldiers, Indian soldiers, women, children who sat down in the snow and never stood up. The survivors get up stiffly like old men and get ready to move. 7,500 are left out of the 16,500 who left Kabul. They've traveled 13 miles. 77 miles to Jalalabad. January 8, 1842. The third day begins with disaster. The group enters another narrow pass, Tungi Tariki, even steeper and more dangerous than Kurd Kabul. The road is little more than a goat path winding between rock walls and over frozen streams. The Afghans are waiting. They've blocked the far end of the pass with fallen trees and rocks. When the group enters, they attack from all sides, front, back, both sides at the same time. The horse soldiers try to charge the barricade. The few remaining officers on horses push their dying horses forward. They're met with focused gunfire. Horses and riders go down together. Captain Thomas Suter of the 44th Regiment, one of the few officers still on horseback, is shot from his saddle. He survives the fall, bloody, but alive. The foot soldiers try to form defensive squares, the classic British response to horse soldier attacks. But Afghan tribesmen aren't horse soldiers. They're skirmishers. Fighters who rush in, fire, pull back, attack from a different angle. The Indian soldier groups, their numbers cut down, try to hold formation. The men of the 27th Bengal Native Infantry form a line across the narrow pass, blocking the back, buying time for the people traveling with the army to escape forward. They're overwhelmed within minutes. Afghan swordsmen rush the line. The Indian soldiers meet them with bayonets. Hand-to-hand fighting breaks out. Men kill and are killed in the space of heartbeats. The line breaks. The survivors retreat, fighting step by step, leaving their dead behind. Brighton is caught in the chaos. His pony rears up as gunfire breaks out around him. He holds on, controls the animal, gets it moving forward. A bullet whistles past his head. Another hits the ground beside him, kicking up snow and ice. He gets off the horse, leads the pony on foot, safer to be lower, harder to hit. Around him, the group is falling apart. The neat separation between military groups and people traveling with the army has collapsed completely. Soldiers and civilians are mixed together. Everyone running, everyone trying to reach the far end of the pass. Brighton sees Captain Skinner ahead, still commanding the back parts of the 44th. The regiment has shrunk to fewer than 100 men, but they're still fighting, still organized. "Form on me," Skinner shouts. Square formation. The remaining men of the 44th form a defensive square, a hollow formation, men facing outward in all directions, bayonets sticking out like a hedgehog. The people traveling with the army crowd into the center of the square, protected by the soldiers around them. The square fights its way forward step by step. Afghan tribesmen charge it from multiple directions. The 44th fires volleys, drops attackers, then meets the rest with bayonets when bullets run out. Skinner is in the center of the square shouting encouragement, directing fire. He's been wounded. A cut across his forehead, blood streaming into his eyes. But he doesn't fall. "Steady men. We've been in worse." It's a lie. They haven't been in worse. But it's a good lie. And the men believe it. The square holds for 2 hours, fighting through the pass. Every yard costs lives. Men fall. The square gets smaller. It keeps moving. Brighton goes with them. He's inside the square now, his pony beside him, surrounded by wounded men and terrified civilians. An Afghan tribesman breaks through the line, slashing with a sword. Brighton raises his gun and fires. The man goes down. 10 bullets left. The fighting continues. The noise is overwhelming. Gunfire, screams, the clash of steel on steel, the thunder of rocks being thrown from the cliffs above. Finally, after what feels like hours, the barricade at the far end of the pass is cleared. The group, what's left of it, pushes through. The survivors collapse onto open ground. Brighton looks around, counting. The 44th Regiment is down to 60 men. 60 out of the 200 who started. The Indian soldier groups are destroyed. The 27th Bengal Native Infantry, which started with 400 men, has 40. The people traveling with the army. He can't even guess. Thousands are missing. Dead in the pass, scattered in the hills, captured. He sits down in the snow and stares at nothing. Captain Skinner sits down nearby. His forehead wound has stopped bleeding, crusted over with frozen blood. How many left in your regiment? Brighton asks. 60, maybe less. Officers. 6. We started with 12. They sit in silence for a moment. We're not going to make it, are we? Skinner says quietly. No. Skinner nods. Thought so. That night, the third night, the temperature drops to 40 below zero. People freeze where they sit. No energy left to huddle together. No warmth left to share. They just close their eyes and don't open them again. By morning on January 9th, fewer than 5,000 people are left. 5,000 out of 16,500 in 3 days. The group gets up and continues east. Brighton gets on his pony. The animal is dying, ribs showing, head hanging, legs shaking, but it's still moving. Just a bit more, Ben whispers. We're halfway. 45 miles to Jalalabad. 45 miles through more passes, more killing grounds, more frozen nights. He looks at the survivors around him, the thin, hollow-eyed soldiers, the skeletal people traveling with the army, the handful of officers trying to keep command over chaos. They're all dead. They just don't know it yet. The group moves east. Day 4 begins. January 9th, 1842. There is no group anymore. What's left is a ragged stream of broken people stumbling through snow, spread across 3 miles of mountain land, held together by nothing except the fact that they're all moving in the same direction, east, toward Jalalabad, toward a place most of them will never reach. Brighton rides near what used to be the middle of the formation. Now it's just a loose scatter of survivors. Soldiers from destroyed regiments. Indian soldiers whose groups no longer exist. People traveling with the army who've lost their families. All walking in silence. No one gives orders. No one takes them. The command structure died with the prisoners. The attacks have changed in character. The Afghans no longer need organized attacks. They simply pick off stragglers one by one like wolves hunting a dying herd. A tribesman on a horse rides down from a ridge, shoots a gun into a group of people traveling with the army walking together, and gallops away before anyone can react. 3 people fall. The rest keep walking, too exhausted to even look back. Ben sees this and keeps riding. There's nothing he can do. His medical supplies are gone. His energy is gone. All he has left is forward motion. The landscape is brutally beautiful. Snow-covered peaks rising into a pale sky. Valleys stretching endlessly between mountain ranges. The kind of land that would inspire awe under different circumstances. Now it just kills. The road, what's left of it, winds through a series of low hills. In places the snow is so deep people have to wade through chest-high piles. Men disappear into them and don't come out. No one digs them out. By mid-morning, Brighton encounters what's left of the 44th Regiment afoot. There are 50 men left. 50 out of the 200 who marched out of Kabul 4 days ago. Captain James Skinner is still alive, still on his feet, though he looks more corpse than man. His uniform is in rags. His face is black with frostbite. Blood has frozen in his beard from the head wound he got yesterday, but his eyes are still sharp, still focused. He sees Brighton and raises a hand in greeting. Brighton rides over and gets off his horse. Captain. Doctor. Skinner's voice is hoarse, barely above a whisper. Still breathing, I see. For now. Skinner looks at his men. 50 soldiers standing in a loose group, muskets held like walking sticks. They're the back guard, or what's left of it. The last organized military group in the column. How many bullets? Brighton asks. 3 per man. After that, it's bayonets and prayers. Brighton nods. He doesn't mention his gun. 10 bullets left. He fired 2. 1 yesterday in the village, 1 in Tungi Tariki Pass. How far to Jalalabad? Skinner asks. 40 miles, maybe less. Skinner laughs. A short, bitter bark. Might as well be 1,000. They stand in silence for a moment, watching the stream of survivors shuffle past. Old men stumbling. Women carrying children who may already be dead. Indian soldiers from broken groups walking alone. I'm pushing ahead, Brighton says quietly. Tonight or tomorrow. Small group, on horses if possible, moving fast. It's the only chance. Skinner nods slowly. Smart. You should take it. Come with me. Can't. The lads need me. He points to his 50 soldiers. What's left of them? They're dying already. I know, but I'm not leaving them to die alone. Skinner holds out a hand. Good luck, Doctor. Brighton shakes it. The captain's hand is cold, the skin rough with frostbite. Good luck, Captain. Brighton gets on his horse and rides away. He doesn't look back. An hour later, the Afghans attack again. This time, it's a horse soldier charge. Maybe a 100 riders sweeping down from the northern ridge. They hit the back of the group where Skinner and his 50 men are walking. Brighton hears the gunfire, distant and sharp. He turns in his saddle and watches. The 44th forms a line, their last defensive formation. They fire a volley. Afghans go down. The riders keep coming. Another volley. More fall. Then the horse soldiers crash into the line. Brighton can see flashes of steel, men falling, horses trampling bodies. The fight lasts maybe 10 minutes. When the Afghan riders pull back, the 44th Regiment of Foot no longer exists. 50 men gone. Captain James Skinner is dead. Her Majesty's 44th, the only British foot soldier regiment in the garrison, has been destroyed. The group doesn't stop, doesn't even slow. People keep walking east. Brighton turns forward and rides on. By afternoon, he finds a group of British horse soldier officers, 6 men still on horses, their horses barely alive, but moving faster than the main body of survivors. He recognizes one of them. Captain Thomas Souter of the 44th, who was shot from his horse yesterday but survived. Souter has gotten another horse somehow. A skeletal Afghan pony that looks ready to collapse. Dr. Brighton, Souter calls out. Where are you headed? East. Same as everyone. We're making a run for it tonight. Fast as we can. The horses won't last another day with the group. Better to ride hard and hope we get through. Brighton looks at the other 5 officers, all on horses, all able to move compared to the thousands walking. Just the 6 of you. Maybe a few others if they can keep up. You should come. Your pony looks stronger than most. Brighton looks back at the group. The stragglers, the wounded, the people traveling with the army stumbling through the snow. 4,000 people, maybe less, dying by degrees. He thinks about the promise he made as a surgeon. First, do no harm. His place is with the wounded, with the sick, with those who need him. But there's nothing he can do for them. No medicine, no supplies, no hope. I'll come, he says. Souter nods. Good. We leave at sunset. Stay close. The group continues east, moving faster than the main body, pulling ahead. They pass through what used to be the front of the group. Now just scattered groups of people too exhausted to keep any formation. A British private from some broken group comes to Brighton, staggering, his hands held out. Doctor, please. Water. Do you have water? Brighton has half a flask. He hands it over. The private drinks it all, hands back the empty flask, and walks away without a word. Brighton lets him go. By late afternoon, the group of officers on horses has grown to 12. All British or Anglo-Indian horse soldiers, all on horseback, all ready to leave what's left of the group. No one speaks the plan out loud, but everyone understands. At sunset, they're going to ride hard for Jalalabad. 40 miles, 1 night and 1 day if the horses hold. Leave behind anyone who can't keep up. It's ruthless. It's necessary. It's the only way any of them survive. Brighton checks his pony. The animal is weak, underfed, bleeding from multiple small wounds. But it's still standing, still breathing. One more night, he whispers to it. Just one more night. The pony's ears flick toward his voice, but it doesn't raise its head. As the sun sets on January 9th, the temperature drops. The sky is clear. No clouds, no snow. Just stars beginning to appear against the deepening blue. Beautiful and deadly. The group of officers on horses gathers on a low hill away from the main body of survivors. 12 men on dying horses getting ready to make a run for Jalalabad. Captain Suter speaks to them quietly. We ride in single file. No talking, no fires. We move through the night. If your horse goes down, you're on your own. We don't stop for anything. Understood. Everyone nods. Brighton tightens the straps on his medical kit. Nearly empty now. Just a scalpel and some strips of cloth. He checks his gun. 10 bullets. He looks back at the group one last time. 4,000 people huddled on the frozen ground, scattered across a mile of hillside. No fires, no shelter, just people dying in the darkness. He thinks about the promise he made, about the patients he's leaving behind, about the wounded who need him. Then he thinks about the 16,000 who left Kabul, about the 12,000 already dead. About the uselessness of dying with them when there's a chance, however small, of survival. He turns his back on the group and faces east. The group rides out at sunset, moving in silence. For the first few hours, the night is quiet. They follow a narrow valley, staying low, avoiding the ridges where Afghan patrols might spot them. The horses move slowly, carefully, their hooves crunching in the snow. Brighton rides near the middle of the line. Ahead of him, Captain Suter leads. Behind him, 3 more officers whose names he doesn't know. The cold is so intense his face goes numb. He can't feel his hands on the reins. He steers the pony by pressure from his knees. After 2 hours, Suter calls a brief stop. The officers get off their horses to rest the horses. No one speaks. They stand in a tight cluster, sharing body heat, waiting. Brighton checks his pony. Its breathing is hard, its legs shaking. He doesn't know if it can make the distance. 40 miles. Still 40 miles to go. They get back on their horses and continue. The night stretches on. Time loses meaning. There's only the rhythm of the horse beneath him, the crunch of snow, the distant howl of wind through the peaks. At some point, Brighton realizes one of the riders is missing. He counts heads. 11. Someone fell behind. No one noticed. No one goes back to look. They ride on. Near midnight, they run into an Afghan patrol. 6 riders moving along a ridge next to them. The 2 groups see each other at the same time. For a moment, no one moves. Then the Afghans raise their guns. Ride. Suter shouts. The officers push their horses into a gallop. Gunfire cracks behind them. A bullet whistles past Brighton's head. Another hits the ground beside his pony, kicking up snow. They ride hard for 10 minutes, the horses gasping, foam flying from their mouths. When they finally slow down, the Afghans are gone. But so is another officer. His horse runs beside them, without a rider. The man is gone, shot from the saddle. 10 officers are left. They continue through the night, the horses dying beneath them step by step. At morning on January 10th, one of the horses collapses. Its rider, a lieutenant from the 5th Cavalry, tries to get it to stand. The horse doesn't move. Leave it. Suitor says. I can get it up. Leave it. Take your saddle and walk. The lieutenant stares at his horse for a long moment, then draws his gun and shoots the animal through the head. The crack echoes across the valley. He takes his saddle and starts walking. The rest ride on. Within 2 hours, the lieutenant has fallen behind. He doesn't call out for them to wait. He knows they won't. 9 officers left. The land changes. The mountains give way to lower hills. The snow gets thinner. For the first time in days, Brighton can see the road clearly. A dirt path winding through rocky ground. They're getting close. He can feel it. Then ahead, a large force of Afghan horse soldiers appears, blocking the road. 200 riders, maybe more. Suitor pulls back on his reins. The officers group together. How many? Someone asks quietly. Too many. We can't fight through. Can we go around? Suitor scans the land. The road runs through a narrow valley. To either side, the ground is too rough for horses. We go back, find another route. They turn and ride west, away from Jalalabad, away from safety. The frustration is overwhelming. They've ridden all night. They're so close. And now they have to go back. By mid-morning, they've lost the road completely. They're finding their way by instinct, following valleys, hoping they go east. Another horse collapses. Another officer left behind. 8. By noon on January 10th, they stumble onto a small village, empty, half buried in snow. They take shelter in one of the buildings, blocking the door with furniture. The horses are kept inside with them. The animals stand with their heads down, too exhausted to even drink when offered snow. Brighton sits against a wall and closes his eyes. Around him, the other officers do the same. No one speaks. An hour later, gunfire breaks out outside. The Afghans have found them. The officers rush to the windows and shoot back through gaps in the mud brick. The fight is brief. The Afghans test the defenses, find them solid, and pull back. But now the British are trapped. They wait until nightfall, then slip out through a gap in the back wall. They lead their horses on foot through the darkness, moving as quietly as possible. By midnight, they're clear of the village and back on something that looks like a road. 7 officers are left. Brighton's pony is barely moving. Its head hangs low. Its steps are unsteady. He knows it won't last another day, but he needs one more day. Just one. They ride through the night of January 10th, moving slowly now, the horses stumbling over rocks they can't see in the darkness. Somewhere ahead is Jalalabad. Somewhere behind is what's left of the group. Maybe 2,000 people scattered across the mountains, freezing, dying, waiting for the end. Brighton doesn't look back. While Brighton and the other officers ride toward Jalalabad, the main body of the group dies. January 10th, 1842. Fewer than 2,000 people are left. The last survivors of the 16,500 who left Kabul 5 days ago. They're scattered across miles of frozen land. No longer a group, just isolated bunches of people too exhausted to go on. The military groups have stopped existing. The 44th Regiment is gone, destroyed yesterday. The Indian soldier groups are broken up, their men dead or scattered. The horse soldiers have no horses. The big gun group left behind its last 2 guns when the crews died. What's left are individuals. A few British soldiers walking alone. Small groups of Indian soldiers trying to stay together. People traveling with the army, mostly women and children, huddled in family clusters, hoping for protection that no longer exists. The Afghans don't even bother with organized attacks anymore. They just ride through the scattered survivors, killing at will, taking prisoners, robbing the dead. By midday on January 10th, the largest remaining group, maybe 200 people, gathers in a small valley. Among them are the last British officers still with the group. Captain John Bygrave of the Shah's forces, Lieutenant Henry Harding of the 5th Cavalry, and a handful of junior officers. They're surrounded by people traveling with the army, women, children, servants, the unarmed civilians who depended on soldiers who can no longer protect them. An Afghan messenger comes up under a flag of truce. The message is simple. Surrender now and you will be spared. Resist and everyone dies. The officers talk about it briefly. They have no bullets left, no food, no hope of reaching Jalalabad. They surrender. The 200 people are taken prisoner. Most of the people traveling with the army will be sold as slaves. Some of the officers will be held as prisoners, eventually ransomed. Many will die in captivity, but they're the lucky ones. They survive the next hour. The rest of the group, another 1,000 people scattered across the mountains, are hunted down over the following days. Some freeze to death. Some are killed by tribesmen. Some simply sit down in the snow and don't stand up again. By January 11th, the group has stopped existing. Of the 16,500 who left Kabul, only a handful are still free. A few small groups of soldiers who managed to avoid capture, a few individuals who hid in caves or ravines and survived by pure luck, and 7 officers on horses riding hard for Jalalabad. Brighton and the 6 other officers ride through the morning of January 11th, exhausted beyond measure, but still moving. They're close now. They can feel it. The land has changed. The mountains giving way to rolling hills, then to more level ground. Jalalabad must be near. 20 miles, maybe less. But the horses are dying. Captain Suter's horse collapses mid-morning. The animal simply stops walking, stands still for a moment, then falls over sideways. Suter gets off before it falls. He looks at the horse, dead, its ribs showing, its eyes glazed, and then at the other officers. Go, he says. I'll walk. We can double up. The horses can't carry 2. Go. I'll follow the road. The 6 remaining officers on horses look at each other. They all know Suter won't make it on foot. Not in this cold. Not with Afghan patrols everywhere. But they also know their horses won't survive carrying 2 riders. Good luck, Captain, one of them says. They ride on. Suter stands alone in the snow, watching them go. Then he starts walking east. 6 officers are left. By noon, they can see the fortress of Jalalabad in the distance. A dark shape on the horizon, maybe 15 miles away. So close. Then ahead, another Afghan force appears. Not blocking the road this time, but ranging across their path, hunting. The officers scatter. They break in different directions. Each man making his own run for safety. The Afghans give chase, splitting up to go after different targets. Brighton pushes his pony into what might be its final gallop. The animal responds, finding some last reserve of strength, some final instinct to survive. He rides low over its neck, urging it forward. Behind him, he hears gunfire. Doesn't know if they're shooting at him or at the others. He doesn't look back. The chase lasts 20 minutes. Then the chase breaks off. The Afghans turn back, having killed or captured easier targets. Brighton slows his pony to a walk. He's alone now. He looks back across the empty plain. No other riders visible. No movement. Just wind and snow and silence. He's the last one. He faces forward toward Jalalabad, toward the fortress. He can see it clearly now in the distance. 12 miles away. His pony is shaking beneath him, dying by degrees. Just a bit more, Brighton whispers. We're almost there. The pony's ears flick, but it doesn't raise its head. They continue east. Behind them, the last bits of the army of the Indus are scattered across 90 miles of frozen mountains. Ahead, Jalalabad waits, a British fortress that will soon learn the size of the disaster. Brighton rides alone through the afternoon of January 11th. 16,500 people left Kabul. One man is still riding. Brighton rides alone. The morning of January 12th breaks cold and clear. The sun rises over the Hindu Kush, painting the snow-covered peaks gold and red. Beautiful, cruel. He's been riding through the night, alone since the other officers scattered yesterday. He doesn't know what happened to them. Captured, probably killed. He heard gunfire after they split up, but he didn't look back. He couldn't look back. His pony walks slowly, each step careful, measured. The animal is dying. Brighton can feel it in the way it moves. The shaking legs, the hard breathing, the way its head hangs so low its nose nearly touches the snow. But it's still moving. Still putting one hoof in front of the other. Just a bit more, Brighton whispers. We can see it now. Jalalabad is visible on the horizon. A dark smudge against the pale landscape, maybe 10 miles away. Stone walls, watchtowers, British flags, safety if he can reach it. The plain between him and the fortress is open, exposed. No cover, no hiding places. If Afghan patrols spot him, there's nowhere to hide. He rides in silence, his body moving with the pony's rhythm, his mind somewhere between alertness and exhaustion. He hasn't slept in 2 days. Hasn't eaten in 3. His water flask is empty. His lips are cracked and bleeding. But he's alive. 16,500 people left Kabul. He's alive and they're dead, and he doesn't know why. Luck. A bunch of papers. A tough pony, a gun with 10 bullets, and choices. 1,000 small choices that meant life for him and death for someone else. He pushes the thoughts away. There will be time for guilt later if he survives. The morning passes slowly. The pony plods forward. Jalalabad grows larger on the horizon. 8 miles, 7. Then he sees movement behind him. He turns in the saddle and his heart sinks. 3 riders, Afghan horse soldiers, coming fast. They're half a mile back but closing. Brighton leans forward, pushes his pony gently. Come on, just a bit faster. The pony responds, breaking into a trot. Its breathing becomes ragged, desperate, but it runs. The Afghan riders close the distance. They're on fresh horses, well-fed, strong. Brighton's pony is a skeleton held together by will and instinct. 400 yards. 300. Brighton draws his gun. 10 bullets. He checks behind him, judges the distance. Not yet. Too far. The riders are shouting to each other in Pashto, working together. One on the left, another on the right. They're trying to trap him. 200 yards away. Britain turns in his saddle, aims at the closest rider, and shoots. He misses. 9 bullets left. The rider doesn't slow down. He shoots back with a rifle. The bullet misses. Britain faces forward. He kicks his horse harder. The animal is breathing hard now. White foam flies from its mouth. It can't keep running this fast. The riders get closer to 100 yards. Britain turns again, aims more carefully, and shoots. The first rider's horse trips and falls down. The rider is thrown off, rolling in the snow. 8 bullets left. The other 2 riders slow down and give themselves more space. They're being careful now. Britain faces forward. Jalalabad is 5 miles away. He can see the walls clearly. He can see the guard towers. Too far. Still too far. The 2 remaining Afghan riders split up, coming from both sides. They're professionals, experienced fighters. They're not going to rush him and give him easy shots. They're going to tire him out, wait for his horse to fall down, then catch him. Britain's horse is stumbling now, its legs barely working. It's running on nothing but fear and instinct. Just a bit more, Britain whispers. Please, just a bit more. The riders get closer again. 100 yards, 75. Then they charge, both at the same time, coming from opposite sides. Britain turns right and shoots at the nearest rider. The bullet hits the man in the shoulder. He jerks but doesn't fall. 7 bullets left. The wounded rider turns away, but the other keeps coming, getting closer to 30 yards, 20. His sword is raised. Britain turns to face him and aims the pistol. The Afghan is too close, too fast. The sword swings toward Britain's head. He ducks. The blade cuts through the air where his head was a second before. but the tip of the sword catches his military hat. It tears through it and cuts across his head. The hit is huge. Britton's head snaps to the side. Blood sprays. Pain explodes through his head. But he doesn't fall from the saddle. The papers, the letters from Scotland, the medical notes, the drawing of his family home folded into the lining of his hat, layered thick. The sword cut through the cloth, through the papers, across his head, but the papers took most of the force. Instead of splitting his head open, the blade gave him a deep cut. Painful, bleeding, but not deadly. Britton sways in the saddle, his vision blurring. Blood pours down his face into his eyes. He can't see. He shoots his pistol blindly toward the Afghan rider. 6 bullets left. He hears the rider shout something. He hears hoofbeats going away. When he wipes the blood from his eyes, the Afghans are leaving. Both of them, the wounded one and the one who hit him. They're not chasing anymore. Britton doesn't know why. Maybe they think he's dead. Maybe they've decided he's not worth the trouble. Maybe they're out of bullets. He doesn't care. He faces forward, blood streaming down his face, and keeps riding. His horse is barely walking now, each step slower than the last. Jalalabad is 4 miles away. The horse falls down at noon, 1 mile from Jalalabad. Britton feels it happening. The animal's legs buckle, its knees hit the ground, then its whole body tips sideways. He barely gets his leg out from under it before it falls. The horse lies on its side in the snow, its breathing fast and shallow. Its eyes roll toward Britton, dark and wet. Britton kneels beside it and strokes its neck with a shaking hand. "You did it," he whispers. "You got me here." The horse's breathing slows, then stops. Britton stays kneeling for a moment, his hand on the dead animal's neck. 90 miles. This horse carried him 90 miles through the worst 7 days of his life, through mountain passes and battles and frozen nights. It carried him when he had no right to ask it to keep going. And now it's dead, a mile from safety. Britton stands slowly. His head throbs where the sword hit him. Blood has soaked his coat, his uniform, dried and frozen in his beard. He reaches up and touches his hat. It's torn open. The papers inside are shredded and blood-soaked. The papers that saved his life. He pulls them out carefully. Letters from his sister. Medical notes. A drawing of home. All of them cut by the sword blade, soaked in his blood, barely readable. He folds them carefully and tucks them back into the torn hat. Then he starts walking. 1 mile. 1 mile to Jalalabad. His legs barely work. He's walked and ridden for 7 days with almost no food, no water, no sleep. His body is running on nothing. But he walks. The fortress grows bigger with each step. He can see details now. The individual stones in the walls, the cannons on the walls, the British flag flying from the central tower. He's going to make it. After everything. After 16,000 people dead. After 7 days in terrible conditions, he's going to make it. Halfway across that final mile, his legs give out. He falls face first into the snow. He lies there for a moment, breathing hard, tasting blood. Then he pushes himself up, gets his hands under him, gets one knee forward, then the other. He stands, and he walks. A quarter mile from the fortress, a shout goes up from the walls. Rider coming. Not a rider, a man on foot. But someone has seen him. The gates begin to open. Britton keeps walking, 1 foot in front of the other. Don't stop. Don't fall again. Just keep moving. Soldiers run out from the gates. British soldiers running toward him across the snow. They reach him. Hands grab his arms, holding him up. Where's the column? Someone asks. Where are the troops? Britton tries to answer. His voice comes out as a croak. He hasn't spoken to another human being in 2 days. Gone, he manages. All gone. They half carry, half walk him through the gates. General Sir Robert Sale is waiting inside the gates. Sale is a tough man, a fighter. His face is weathered by decades of war. He commanded the soldiers at Jalalabad for months. Separated, under attack, waiting for help from Kabul that never came. Now help has arrived. One man on foot, covered in blood. Sale kneels beside Britton as soldiers lower him to the ground. "Dr. Britton," Sale says, recognizing him. "Where is the column? Where is General Elphinstone?" Britton looks up at him. Blood drips from his face onto the snow. "I am the column." Sale's face goes pale. "What? 16,000 left Kabul. I'm what's left." The words hang in the air. Silence spreads across the area. Soldiers who were crowding around to hear news step back, shocked. "The others?" Sale asks quietly. "Where are the troops? The regiments, the civilians?" "Dead. Frozen in the passes. Killed by Akbar Khan's forces. Captured. General Elphinstone taken prisoner days ago. The 44th Regiment destroyed. Captain Skinner is dead. The Indian battalions are gone. The camp followers, the women, the children." Britton closes his eyes. "Gone." Sale stands slowly, his hands shaking. He looks past Britton, toward the mountains to the west, toward the passes, as if expecting to see the column appear over the horizon. Nothing. Just empty ground and distant mountains. He looks back at Britton. How many might still be coming? Stragglers, others who fell behind. Britton opens his eyes. Maybe a few. The prisoners if Akbar Khan keeps them alive. Some soldiers who hid. But the column is gone. A doctor arrives and begins checking Britton's head wound. The cut across his head is deep, bone visible beneath. The doctor cleans it and begins stitching. Britton doesn't make a sound. "You're lucky," the doctor says. "Another inch, and this would have split your head open." Britton reaches up and touches his torn hat, the shredded papers inside. It was the papers. Letters from home. I folded them into the hat lining. The doctor looks at the hat and pulls out the blood-soaked papers. They're cut nearly in half by the sword strike. "These saved your life." "I know." Britton is carried to the medical building. They lay him on a bed, the first bed he's slept in since leaving Kabul. The doctor finishes stitching his wound and wraps it in clean bandages. "You need rest, doctor, and food. When did you last eat?" Britton thinks. 3 days ago, maybe 4. "I don't remember." They bring him water, which he drinks slowly, then thin soup, which he can barely keep down. Around him, the soldiers are in chaos. Officers run from building to building, demanding information. Riders are sent out to search for other survivors. The soldiers are prepared. Plans are made for a rescue group, but Britton knows the truth. There's no one left to rescue. General Sale returns to the medical building an hour later. He sits beside Britton's bed. "Tell me what happened from the beginning." So Britton tells him. The fort, McNaughton's murder, the decision to trust Akbar Khan, the leaving, the shooting through Kabul's outskirts, Kurd Kabul Pass, 3,000 dead in one afternoon, the prisoners taken, the frozen nights, Tezin Pass, the final breakup of the column. He tells it without emotion, without feeling, just facts, numbers, events. When he finishes, Sale is silent for a long time. 16,000, Sale says finally. "The largest British force in Afghanistan gone." "Yes, sir. And you're the only one who made it through." "So far. There might be others. The prisoners, a few soldiers, but out of the 16,000, yes, I'm the only one." Sale stands and walks to the window. He stares out at the mountains. When word reaches London, there will be questions, investigations. Someone will be held responsible. "The people responsible are dead, sir. McNaughton, Elphinstone. Shelton is a prisoner. There's no one left to blame." Sale turns back. "Then they'll blame Afghanistan. And we'll come back with more troops, more guns. We'll punish them for this." Britain thinks about the passes, the mountains, The tribesmen who can disappear into the hills and reappear anywhere. The winter that kills more efficiently than any army. We'll try, he says quietly. But Afghanistan doesn't lose. It just waits. Over the next few days, a handful of other survivors trickle into Jalalabad. An Indian soldier from the 37th Bengal Native Infantry who hid in a cave for 3 days, then walked to Jalalabad. He's the only survivor from his entire battalion. 2 British privates who escaped during the final chaos and survived by pretending to be dead when Afghan looters passed. An Afghan guide who was with the column and managed to blend in with local tribesmen after the collapse. In total, fewer than a dozen soldiers make it to Jalalabad on their own. The prisoners, those who survive captivity, will be ransomed months later. General Elphinstone will die in Afghan custody in April of disease and sadness. Major Pottinger will survive and be released. Lieutenant Sturt's pregnant wife will survive, have a baby in captivity, and eventually be freed. But of the 16,500 who left Kabul on January 6, 1842, fewer than 100 will ever see freedom again. The rest are gone, buried in snow, scattered across 90 miles of Afghan mountains, lost to history, except as numbers in death reports. Britain becomes the face of the disaster. Artists sketch him as he arrived. Blood-soaked, barely alive, the lone survivor. The image spreads across India, then to London. Newspapers publish the story. The sole survivor of Kabul. It's not entirely accurate. There are other survivors, but Britain is the one who rode through the gates, who delivered the news, who spoke the words that will echo through history. Where is the army? I am the army. He recovers slowly. The head wound heals, leaving a long scar across his head that he'll carry for the rest of his life. The frostbite costs him 2 toes, some hearing in his left ear, permanent sensitivity to cold. But he's alive. On January 20, 1842, a week after his arrival, General Sale calls him to the command building. Dr. Britain, you're being sent back to India. You need proper medical care, and you need to deliver a full report to the Governor-General. What about the prisoners, sir? The rescue effort. The Army of Revenge is being assembled in Peshawar. General Pollock will march to Kabul in the spring. We'll recover what prisoners we can and punish the Afghans for this massacre. But that's not your concern anymore. You've done your part. Britain nods. He knows what "done your part" means. You survived when 16,000 others didn't. That's enough. More than enough. He leaves Jalalabad on January 22, part of a small group heading back to India through the Khyber Pass. He rides a fresh horse provided by the soldiers. His torn, blood-stained uniform has been replaced. His medical kit has been restocked, but he carries the same papers, the letters from home, the medical notes, the drawing of Scotland, cut in half by an Afghan sword, soaked in his blood. He folds them carefully and tucks them into his new hat. As the group moves west through the Khyber Pass, Britain looks back one last time at Afghanistan, at the mountains, at the passes that swallowed an army. Somewhere in those mountains, 16,000 people are still there, frozen, forgotten, waiting for spring thaws that will reveal their bones. Captain Skinner and the 44th Regiment who held the line until the end. The Indian battalions, Indian soldiers who fought loyally for a British cause and died far from home. The camp followers, 12,000 civilians, women, and children who had no choice but to follow and no chance to survive. Officers and soldiers whose names were recorded in military records but whose graves will never be marked. All of them gone. And William Britain, assistant surgeon, East India Company Army, 29 years old, riding away alive. He doesn't know why he survived. He doesn't know what twist of fate or divine help or pure random chance meant life for him and death for everyone else. He just knows that he'll carry them with him for the rest of his life. 16,000 ghosts and one man still breathing. Spring 1842. News of the disaster reaches Kolkata in late January. By February, it's in London. The newspapers explode with shock, anger, and demands for revenge. 16,000 lost in Afghan snows. The greatest military disaster in British history. Sole survivor tells of massacre. Parliament holds emergency meetings. The East India Company is brought before committees. Members of Parliament demand answers. How could an entire army be destroyed? Who authorized the withdrawal? Who failed to provide enough supplies? Enough leadership? Enough planning? The dead are blamed. Macnaghten for trusting Akbar Khan. Elphinstone for being indecisive and incompetent. Shelton for being arrogant and making poor tactical decisions. None of them are alive to defend themselves. The public doesn't want explanations. They want blood. In March 1842, the Governor-General of India, Lord Ellenborough, authorizes the Army of Revenge. The mission is clear. Recover the prisoners, punish the Afghans for the massacre, and restore British honor. The command goes to General George Pollock, a 60-year-old artillery officer with decades of experience in India. Pollock is methodical, cautious, professional. Everything Elphinstone was not. He gathers his force in Peshawar. 8,000 British and Indian troops, well supplied, well armed, supported by heavy artillery. This is not the starving, demoralized soldiers that left Kabul in January. This is a professional military mission designed to crush resistance. On April 5, 1842, Pollock's army enters the Khyber Pass. The Afghans try to stop them. Tribesmen occupy the heights and fire down on the column, trying the same tactics that destroyed Elphinstone's retreat. But Pollock's force is different. They move in organized columns with strong protection on the sides. They take the high ground before advancing through each narrow pass. They use artillery to stop enemy positions. They fight with discipline and overwhelming firepower. The Khyber Pass is forced in 3 days with minimal deaths. By mid-April, Pollock reaches Jalalabad and relieves General Sale's soldiers. William Brydden is no longer there. He was sent back to India in late January to recover and to deliver his report to the authorities. But the soldiers at Jalalabad tell Pollock what happened. They show him the mountains to the west where 16,000 people disappeared. Pollock gathers his force and waits. Another column commanded by General William Nott is marching from Kandahar in the south. The plan is to meet at Kabul from 2 directions. Trap Akbar Khan's forces, recover the prisoners, and burn the Afghan capital in payback. On September 7, 1842, Pollock's army begins the march to Kabul. They retrace the route of the retreat, moving through the same passes where the column died 5 months earlier. What they find is horrible. Kurd Kabul Pass is covered with bones. Skulls, rib cages. The small fragile bones of children's hands and feet, all half buried in the melting snow, scattered across 5 miles of gorge. British soldiers walk through the pass in silence, stepping over the remains of comrades, families, civilians who died screaming in the cold. Some of the dead can still be identified. A uniform jacket with military insignia, a woman's shawl, a child's shoe. Most are nameless, just bones bleaching in the sun. The army doesn't stop to bury them. There are too many. The pass itself has become a grave. They continue toward Kabul. Akbar Khan's forces melt away before them. The tribal armies, their bloodlust satisfied and their coffers full of British loot, retreat into the mountains. The chiefs who supported the uprising scatter to their strongholds. Kabul is retaken without a major battle. The prisoners are recovered, those who survived. General Elphinstone is not among them. He died in April in Afghan captivity of disease and shame. His body is recovered and given a military burial. Major Eldred Pottinger is found alive, thin and hollow-eyed, but alive. Lieutenant Sturt survived captivity. His wife survived, gave birth to a daughter while imprisoned, and both mother and child are recovered. Captain Colin Mackenzie is freed. Brigadier Shelton is found alive, bitter and defiant to the end. In total, 95 prisoners are recovered. British officers, their wives and children, a handful of Indian soldiers. Out of 16,500 who left Kabul, 95 are brought back alive. Less than 1%. Pollock gives the order for payback. The great marketplace of Kabul, where Macnaghten's severed hands were displayed on spikes, is burned to the ground. Afghan prisoners are hanged in the streets. Villages suspected of hiding tribal fighters are destroyed. It's revenge, not justice. But revenge is what London demanded. Some of Pollock's own officers protest. Captain Henry Havelock, who will later become famous during the Indian Mutiny, writes in his journal, "We destroy what we cannot hold, punish those we cannot govern, and call it victory." But the orders stand. On October 12, 1842, Pollock's army leaves Kabul. They march back through the passes, past the bones still scattered in the gorges, past Jalalabad, through the Khyber Pass, and back into India. By November, every British soldier has left Afghanistan. No treaties are signed, no client governments are set up, no land is gained. The British invaded Afghanistan in 1839 to prevent Russian influence. They put in a puppet king, Shah Shuja, who was murdered by his own people in 1842. They occupied Kabul for 2 years, bled themselves dry, and left with nothing to show for it except 16,000 dead. The First Anglo-Afghan War ends exactly where it began, with the British in India and the Afghans in their mountains. Except now 16,000 people are dead, and Afghanistan has earned a reputation it will carry for the next 2 centuries. The Graveyard of Empires. William Britain returns to England in late 1842. He's supposed to be a hero. The man who survived, the lone witness to the greatest disaster in British military history. Instead, he feels like a ghost. He's brought before military boards of inquiry and questioned for hours about every detail of the retreat. What happened in the passes? Why did the column fail? Could anything have been done differently? He answers honestly. The fort was impossible to defend. Elphinstone was incapable of command. Macnaghten trusted Akbar Khan against all evidence. The cold and the terrain killed as many people as the Afghans. But the questioners want more. They want to know about individual decisions. Why were the camp followers not left behind? Why didn't the column fight its way out immediately instead of negotiating? Why was so much ammunition wasted? Britain grows frustrated. You're asking why 16,000 starving, freezing people didn't make perfect tactical decisions while being shot at and dying of cold. The answer is because they were human. The inquiry moves on to other witnesses. Britain is dismissed. He's invited to speak at public events, military dinners, historical societies, patriotic rallies. He declines most. When he does accept, he speaks in a flat, factual tone that disappoints audiences expecting tales of heroism. At a dinner in London, someone asks him, "Dr. Britain, what was the worst moment of the retreat?" Britain stares into his wine glass for a long time. The passes. The children freezing. The Indian soldiers who died fighting to protect civilians they couldn't save. Skinner's last stand. The horse collapsing a mile from safety. The sword strike that should have killed him but didn't. All of it, he finally says. Every moment was the worst moment. The questioner looks disappointed, but Britain doesn't care. He's not here to entertain. He's here because they asked him to be, and refusing would draw more attention than accepting. The nightmares begin in the spring of 1843. He's back in the passes, walking through snow that never ends. Bodies on all sides, frozen in positions of agony. He tries to help them, but his hands pass through them like smoke. Sometimes he dreams he's still riding, the horse beneath him dying. Jalalabad always visible on the horizon but never getting closer. He wakes gasping, his sheets soaked with sweat, his hand reaching for the pistol he no longer carries. His family tries to help. His sister invites him to stay at their home in Scotland. His mother writes letters urging him to rest, to recover, to move forward with his life. He tries. He returns to medical practice, working as a surgeon in Scotland. He's skilled, professional, respected. His colleagues notice he's quiet, reserved, but he does good work. He marries in 1846, a woman named Mary, who is patient and kind and doesn't ask about Afghanistan unless he brings it up. He doesn't bring it up. They have children. He builds a life that from the outside looks normal. But inside, he's still in the passes. In 1847, an artist named William Barnes Wallen approaches him. Wallen wants to paint a historical piece, Remnants of an Army, showing Britain's arrival at Jalalabad. The lone survivor on a dying horse, bloodied but triumphant. Britain agrees reluctantly. He sits for the preliminary sketches and describes the horse, the uniform, the wound. The painting becomes famous. It's shown in London, reproduced in newspapers, used in military schools to teach about the dangers of poor command. Britain hates it. Because the painting shows a hero. A man who conquered impossible odds. A symbol of British strength. But Britain doesn't feel like a hero. He feels like a thief who stole 16,000 lives. Years pass. The memories don't fade, but he learns to function with them. The nightmares become less frequent. The guilt becomes a weight he carries instead of a wound that bleeds. In 1857, the Indian Mutiny breaks out. Britain, now 44 years old, volunteers to return to India as a medical officer. He serves through the rebellion, treating wounded soldiers, organizing field hospitals. People ask him why he went back after what he survived. Why return to India? Because I'm a surgeon, he says. Men are dying. That's where I'm needed. He doesn't say the rest. That part of him never left Afghanistan. That part of him is still in the passes with the 16,000. That going back to India is the closest he can come to rejoining them. He survives the mutiny and returns to Scotland in 1859. On March 20, 1873, at the age of 61, William Britten dies in Scotland. His obituary in the Times calls him the sole survivor of the Kabul retreat, and praises his remarkable fortitude and service to the Crown. His funeral is attended by military officers, fellow surgeons, family, and friends. He's buried with full honors. His headstone reads simply, William Britten, M.D., survivor of Kabul, 1842. Among his personal things, his family finds a journal. Mostly routine medical observations, supply notes, professional correspondence. But the final entry, dated April 15, 1842, written months after his return from Afghanistan, is different. I am asked what I remember most. They expect me to speak of the cold, or the fighting, or the fear. But what I remember is the silence after, when the shooting stopped and the column had passed and you could hear the wind moving through the pass and underneath it, very faint, the sound of people dying, calling for help that would not come. I rode on because to stop was to die. I rode on because I had a horse and others did not. I rode on because I am human and humans choose survival even when it means leaving others behind. I do not know if I am blessed or cursed. I lived when 16,000 died. I cannot say why. I can only carry them with me, these 16,000 ghosts, and hope that bearing witness to their deaths gives some small meaning to their sacrifice. If there is a God, I will ask him one day, why me? Why was I spared? Until then, I live. I work. I remember. That is all I can do. The journal is donated to the British Library where it sits in the archives for decades, rarely read. But the words remain, a testimony to survivors' guilt, to the cost of being the last man standing. The First Anglo-Afghan War becomes a warning tale. For decades afterward, British military schools study the retreat. Officers analyze what went wrong at every level. Strategic, operational, tactical. The lessons are clear. Don't occupy what you cannot hold. Don't trust political arrangements backed only by gold. Don't ignore supplies. Don't underestimate terrain and weather. Don't put incompetent commanders in charge of impossible situations. The lessons officially are learned. But empires have short memories. In 1878, the British returned to Afghanistan. The Second Anglo-Afghan War begins over disputes about Russian influence. The same reason as the First War. British and Indian troops invade, occupy Kabul, and install a friendly government. The war lasts 2 years. The British achieve some tactical successes. But the strategic situation is identical. They cannot hold the country. The cost is too high. The terrain is too difficult. The population is too hostile. They leave in 1880, having gained nothing. In 1919, the Third Anglo-Afghan War breaks out. It lasts 1 month. The British leave again, this time granting Afghanistan full independence. The pattern is clear to anyone willing to see it. Afghanistan is unconquerable, not because its armies are superior, but because its terrain is merciless, its winters are deadly, and its people outlast every occupier. The British learned this lesson in blood 3 times over 7 decades. But other empires don't learn from Britain's mistakes. In December 1979, the Soviet Union invades Afghanistan. They bring modern weapons, helicopter gunships, mechanized infantry, overwhelming firepower. They're confident they can succeed where the 19th century British failed. 10 years later, they leave in defeat. 15,000 Soviet soldiers dead. Tens of thousands wounded. The Soviet economy shattered by the cost of the war. The Soviet Union collapses 2 years later. The Afghan War is not the only cause, but it's a significant factor. The graveyard of empires claims another victim. In October 2001, NATO forces enter Afghanistan following the September 11th attacks. The mission is counter-terrorism, not occupation. But years stretch into decades. The mountains remain. The Taliban adapts. The foreign soldiers, despite superior technology and firepower, cannot impose permanent control. By 2021, NATO leaves. The Taliban returns to power. 20 years, trillions of dollars, thousands of lives. The outcome is the same as every previous intervention. Afghanistan doesn't defeat its invaders through superior military force. It defeats them through patience, through terrain, through the simple fact that foreign armies eventually go home. But Afghans remain in Afghanistan. The pattern has repeated for nearly 2 centuries. The British in 1842, 1880, 1919. The Soviets in 1989. NATO in 2021. Every empire believes it will be different. Every empire learns the same lesson at the same cost. In the Hindu Kush, the passes remain unchanged. Kurd Kabul, Tezin, the gorges where 16,000 people died in 1842. Local guides still tell stories. They point to places where bones come out from the melting snow. Buttons, buckles, scraps of cloth, children's shoes, military insignia. The bones don't last forever. Wind and water scatter them. Animals carry them away. But every few years, a spring thaw reveals something new. A skull. A piece of a musket. A British coin dated 1841. Physical reminders that 16,000 people died here. Chasing an empire's dream that was doomed from the start. The guides refuse to camp in certain places. They hurry through Kurd Kabul even in summer, their eyes on the cliffs as if expecting gunfire that stopped echoing 180 years ago. When asked why, they shrug. The dead are still here. The mountains remember. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. And in Afghanistan, the rhyme is always the same. Come with your armies. Come with your plans. Come with your certainty that you're different from those who came before. The mountains will wait. The winter will come. And in the end, you will leave if you leave at all. 16,500 people left Kabul on January 6, 1842. One man reached Jalalabad on January 13, 7 days. 90 miles. An entire army erased. The numbers are almost impossible to understand. In 1 week, across 5 mountain passes, the largest British force in Afghanistan simply ceased to exist. Not defeated in a single terrible battle. Not surrendered in a negotiated peace. Simply dissolved, frozen, killed, scattered like ash across the Hindu Kush. The causes are easy to list. Incompetent leadership, poor planning, cultural arrogance, broken promises, brutal terrain, merciless cold. But lists don't capture the reality. The reality is 12,000 unarmed civilians, women, children, servants dying in the snow because they followed an army that couldn't protect them. The reality is professional soldiers, British and Indian, men who'd served for decades, dying not in glorious battle but in chaotic retreats through frozen passes. The reality is Captain James Skinner standing with 50 men against 200 cavalry because someone had to hold the line even when the line was already broken. The reality is William Britton riding past people begging for help because stopping meant dying with them and one more death wouldn't save anyone. The reality is 16,000 individual deaths. 16,000 people who woke up on January 6 not knowing they had 7 days or less to live. History remembers the retreat from Kabul as a military disaster. A warning tale. A dark chapter in the story of empire. But for the people who lived it and died in it, it was something else. It was cold beyond imagining. It was watching your children freeze in your arms. It was fighting with empty muskets because the ammunition ran out days ago. It was choosing between impossible options and knowing all of them led to death. It was the moment when civilization's thin promises, safe passage, honorable terms, negotiated withdrawal, revealed themselves as lies. William Britton survived by being on a horse, being mobile, being willing to ride ahead when others stayed behind. He never forgave himself for it. The passes of the Hindu Kush still stand. The snow still falls. And somewhere beneath it, in valleys and gorges scattered across 90 miles of Afghan mountains, 16,000 voices are still calling for water. For warmth. For help that will never come. For home they'll never see. No one answers. No one ever will. This is history that refuses to be forgotten. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the cost of empire, the nature of survival, the weight of impossible choices, hit that like button. It genuinely helps us bring more stories like this to light. Drop a comment below. What lesson should we take from the 1842 retreat? Do empires ever really learn from history? Or are we doomed to repeat the same mistakes in different mountains, different wars, different centuries? And if you want more history that challenges, provokes, and refuses to look away from hard truths, subscribe. Because there are more stories like this. Stories that deserve to be told. Stories that remind us what human beings are capable of. Both the nobility and the horror. Thanks for watching. Remember Kabul 1842. Remember the 16,000. Remember Dr. William Britton who came home carrying their ghosts. And remember Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires, where the mountains are patient and the snow covers everything but never quite buries the past. I'll see you in the next.